Hey guys, welcome back to Whiskey on the West Coast. My name is Matt, and today we're going to be talking about the best whiskeys of 2022. My best whiskeys of 2022. We're going to be talking about taking you through part one of a two-part series. In part one, we're going to be talking about 5 different categories that stood out to me for my best whiskeys of 2022. Part two, we're going to go ahead and just take you through number 1 through 5, the best whiskeys that I tasted this year. All right, if you're following along with us, comment down below as we go through each category. What is the winner for you in that category? All right, let's get to it. So starting off with category number 1, we're going to be talking about the biggest surprise of 2022. All right, and it really shouldn't be such a surprise, but it kind of floored me because this is a new distillery. They're new on the scene. It's young spirit, and yet it's still so characterful. So the biggest surprise for me in whiskey for 2022 was just how good Ardnamurchan really is. Now, Ardnamurchan is a distillery in the Western Highlands of Scotland. This is a single malt by them. It's about 6 years old. This bottling is AD012101. It is 46.8% alcohol. It is, again, a single malt. It's a vatting of, I believe, 65% ex-bourbon, 35% sherry casks. And they're just doing everything right at Ardnamurchan. It's owned by the Adelphi, independent bottlers. They are doing long fermentations, wooden washbacks. They're doing everything they can to make this super character driven. It's oily, it's moderately peated, it's mineralic, it's fruity, and it's only 6 years old. The cask strength I hear is phenomenal. I haven't cracked one of those yet, but I am just blown away by this. And actually, it's what I poured into this glass for today. And it's really freaking good. If you can, and you haven't had Ardnamurchan yet, get a bottle, dig into one, because sky's the limit if this is how they started. All right, check them out. Category number 2 on my best of 2022 list is going to be best blend, or in this case, best blended malt. I have a real affinity, a real affection for blended malts. I think they can be real stunners, and this one is no exception. Okay, so best blended malt for 2022 is the Compass Box No Name number 3. Now this blend, it came out in 2021. I cracked mine in 2022, which is why it's on this list. This is the list of the best whiskeys I tasted this year. Now this whiskey is a blend of a heavily peated whiskey, Laphroaig in this case, 15-year-old Laphroaig. It's nearly 75% comprised of that. You've got about 11% of a lightly peated malt, which in this case is going to be Bowmore. So you got 2 Isle of malts in here. Then you got 18-year-old Mortlock, which is going to bring some heft with those worm tubs. And then we've got like 6% 17-year-old Kleinleash, some wax, some viscosity, some nice fruits off that. And then some of their Highland malt blend at 13 years old, about half percentage. Really interesting composition to this blend. Now, what does it taste like? Seaweed, barbecue from the Laphroaig. Get like pineapple, mango, guava from that Bowmore. You've got, again, a lot of texture on the palate, really supple texture from that Kleinleash, I'm guessing. Beautifully put together. I've never been so blessed to be able to try like a 60s or 70s Laphroaig 10-year-old, something like that. But from the descriptions I've read, it almost sounds like that's what they were trying to recreate here. A really tropical, but peaty, and waxy and viscous malt. I mean, who can argue with that? If you like peated whiskeys, this is an absolute stunner of a blend. Compass Box, James Saxon, John Glazer, they knocked it out of the park. I really like this whiskey. Best Blended Malt 2022. Our third category on this list of best whiskeys of 2022, part one, is going to be best bourbon. Now, I'm not huge on bourbon. For sure, my preferred profile for whiskey is definitely going to be malt, single malts in particular. Scotch, that's my wheelhouse, that's my comfort zone, that's where I want to be. However, you got to change it up every once in a while. And for when people come over who aren't into Scotch, you should have something to pour for them. Oftentimes that's bourbon. I tasted a number of bourbons this year, took part in tastings, and some really did stand out to me. Michter's 10-year-old single barrel, for instance, it's sourced juice, it's sourced bourbon, however, really tasty. That price tag though, at over $200 Canadian a bottle, tough pill to swallow, especially when there is a comparable 10-year-old that is found on our shelves basically all year long. It can be hard to find, but if you do enough searching, you're bound to find it here in British Columbia. And that bottle is Eagle Rare 10-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Eagle Rare is a classic. It seems like everyone in the whiskey world knows it. And in certain parts of the whiskey world, it's becoming really scarce. I know it can go for high dollar values on the secondary in some parts of the United States, even Ontario. That said, that's just not the reality here in BC. I can find this for $60 to $70 Canadian off the shelf, and basically all year round. For that reason, I don't need to search any further than this. All the classic bourbon notes done well in an age-stated 10-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon. I can get 3 bottles plus a little bit extra left behind for this versus 1 bottle of Michter's 10-year-old single barrel. For those reasons, this is my best bourbon of 2022. I think it's stellar, and I think I'm going to keep it on my shelf. Our second last category on our best whiskeys of 2022 part 1 is going to be best single cask. Now, I threw this on here because I didn't want to be throwing single cask whiskeys into my top 5 whiskeys of the year. That's just because single casks, they're so unique. They're so individual in their presentation. And the fact is, you can't necessarily find the same single cask that I'm tasting. There's only 200, 300, sometimes 500 bottles of each one, and then it's gone. And that's not much help to you for me to tell you, yeah, this whiskey you can't buy. It's really great. For that reason, I'm going to throw my best single cask into this category. And it's good. And you can still get it here in British Columbia. It's still on shelves. It's still for sale, right? My best single cask whiskey of 2022 is going to be by Talent Distilling, the Bruichladdich Cask 581. Now, this is an independently bottled Bruichladdich from Islay. It is bottled by Talent Distillery. It's they're actually not a distillery quite yet. Or at least I'm not sure where they are in the process. The plan is for them to create an Islay-inspired distillery here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And the man behind it, Simon Farrington, is an Islay. He is from Islay. He grew up there, and he has roots and connections there. And his connections in Islay are what got him these Bruichladdich casks. So this Bruichladdich Single Malt Scotch Whisky, he sourced through what I understand to be a family friend, Jim McEwen. You may have heard the name before. All right, this whiskey in particular, it is from a single first fill Oloroso sherry cask. It is age stated on the front 14 years old. My understanding is that's because labeling happened far before they were able to actually bottle this and bring this over to Canada. My understanding is that this is actually 16-year-old Bruichladdich in this bottle. It's bottled at 58.8% and distilled in 2003. So this is pretty close to the beginning of new Bruichladdich once it reopened. It's a sherry bomb. It is nutty, it is rich, it's deep, it's fruity. It is just all sorts of dessert tones like black forest cake, leather, tobacco, again, nutty, and you still have a bit of that Bruichladdich lactic note. I love it. And the bottle is super cool. I'm not sure if you can see, but you've got these wood rings on the back. Everything about this is really well done. There's even information on the back of where they sourced the sherry cask. I can't say enough about this. I want to do a review of this in the future for you. And he also has 4 more single casks he sourced from Bruichladdich. Lots to look for here. Lots to look forward to see if they can get this distillery off the ground and running. That is my best single cask of 2022. Talent Distillery, Bruichladdich Cask 581. Get it if you can. Okay, our final category for best whiskeys of 2022 part 1 is going to be best value whiskey from 2022. Now, if you've joined us here before, you're probably pretty familiar with the 2 bottles in front here. That's because we featured them on our Christmas gift list for 2022. And we also did individual reviews for both of them. They are fantastic values. And if you're wanting to hear more about those or you haven't seen them yet, you'll find the links in the description below for all those videos. Just to refresh your memory, if you aren't familiar, $70 Canadian for this one, about $65 Canadian for this one. Again, great values. However, I think I've got them beat. With an Islay Single Malt Whiskey. This is from Bruichladdich Distilling. And it is Port Charlotte Islay Barley 2012. This is a whiskey. I love this whiskey. Now, if you're familiar with Bruichladdich, they have unpeated distillate. They have heavily peated distillate with Port Charlotte. They have Loch-and-Dal, which is kind of just another step up after that. And they have Octomore. Now, Octomore, the most heavily peated whiskey in the world. They have their 0.3 series. Now, their 0.3 series is made up of 100% Islay barley. That's what the 0.3 usually indicates. That Islay barley comes from Octomore Farms. It's bottled at cask strength, and they charge a premium for this whiskey. It's 5 years old, and right now the 0.3s are running over $300 Canadian in our markets here. A lot of money. Great whiskey though. Enter the Port Charlotte Islay barley. Now this is the 2012. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 2012, but for me, the 2012 was the ticket this year. The 2012 Islay barley, it's 100% Islay barley. It actually lists right down here all the farms in Islay it came from. Now, barley is pretty hard to grow on Islay. It's a pretty rugged environment, which means added costs. It's hard to get a full yield and a full harvest. On top of that, this bottle isn't proofed down to 40%, 43%, 46% even. It's bottled at 50% alcohol. It is peaty, smoky, it's oily, it's coastal. I believe the Islay barley really imparts a lot of oils, a lot of extra salinity, a lot of coastal vibes. It's fruity with some melon, and it has that Bruichladdich trademark lactic note. I always pick that up, especially on the Islay barley, even more than just the regular Port Charlotte 10. Bottle 6 years old, not 5 years old like the Octomore 0.3s. It's got Providence. It's bottled overproof of 50%. It is delicious. It is a peat punch in your face. I love this whiskey. It retails for under $100 in my market. At least when I picked up my bottle, it was under $100. I think it was $96. It was less than 1/3 the price of an Octomore 0.3. That is value. I love this whiskey. I have more bottles of this whiskey. I'll continue to buy more bottles of this whiskey because I think it is a brilliant value proposition, especially if you know and love Octomore. There you have it, guys. That is part 1 of the best whiskeys of 2022. Come back for part 2 if you liked what you saw. In that video, like I said, we're going to be covering just my top 5 whiskeys altogether from 2022. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I hope you join us for more. Sláinte.